Today's episode is sponsored by vehiclescore.co.uk, the best site to visit if you want to make a more informed decision when buying a used car.
Hello and welcome to the July episode of Charging Status, the UK and Ireland EV-focused podcast brought to you from the interface. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jim Starling. How are you doing, Jim?
Yeah, good, Alex.
Awesome. Good stuff. Busy month. A lot of new car launches again. There's quite a few cars that are going out, one or two cars going out of production. But also, we've been driving some cars this month, last few months. What have you been driving the last few weeks?
I guess the two sort of standout EVs would be, I had the Mercedes eVito van, which was quite a new experience. I think with the first incarnation of the eVito, it had a fairly shocking range. So they've dealt with that and improved that a bit. But it still is a big ask. It's about 47 grand for a van that's in the real world doing about 130 miles. Certainly from an interior point of view and a tech point of view, it feels a little bit behind something like the new e-Transit. And I just wonder how many people realistically will be able to take an electric van at the moment for anything other than those multi-drop local last mile type delivery drives.
And when it's compared to the e-Transit Custom, I had a look around that a few months ago at that CV show. That's just a similar size, going to be a lot cheaper than that. And that's just way, way above. I mean, you mentioned in the video the screen size was just way too small. And then Ford are doing that huge screen with the folding steering wheel. It's just way, way ahead of it. So
yeah, massively.
I think they'll have to scale back that and then refresh it again at some point.
The other thing that's lacking on that is the number of views I've had on that video. So if you're listening to this, go and watch my video, please. I've also had the IONIQ 6, which I did that big European tour in. If you haven't seen that video yet, folks, that's the best video I've ever made. Actually, two parts to that one on my channel and one on a guy called Tom Shorrock's channel. Tom joined me on the trip and we did 5 countries in one day in the IONIQ 6. Without a doubt, it's the best electric vehicle I've driven. In as much as, obviously, you can look at some of the Teslas that have a bit more range. Certainly, Tesla's got the nod probably on the software side of things still and the amount they can do sort of over the air. But as a driving experience and all-round kind of package, the IONIQ 6 is exceptionally good. A lot of people find the styling of it a little bit challenging. I think the one we had in that nice grey really suited the car and it grew good on us both. Yeah. But that was a great video, so go and check that one out as well on my channel. Definitely Not a Guru.
I enjoyed that video. Tom's definitely quite a funny character. It's quite fun to watch, though.
I think it was me.
But do you think you pulled out of him?
I did. Yeah. Not everyone can do that, but I'm like a magician. You know, I can pull a personality even out of a cynical northerner like Tom.
In terms of what I've been driving, it's not an electric car, but I drove the Honda Civic Hybrid a few weeks ago. There's a review up on the Interface YouTube channel. Go ahead and look at that. Links are in the show notes. That was an exceptional car. The reason I mention it is it drives like an EV because there's no gears. It is a hybrid and you can run it in EV only mode. I was really, really impressed with that. Cracking car to drive. I think we've both driven that now.
Yeah, I had that one last year, and I think I said last year that was my car of the year. I've also got it again in a couple of weeks actually, because I'm going to be presenting some reviews for Men and Motors, and that will be my first one. Will be that hybrid Civic again. So
sounds
looking forward to it.
Nice one. I also had a overnight test drive of a Tesla Model Y. That was my first Tesla experience. That was immense. I had the Model Y Performance, and it's sort of on a private test track. Sort of floored it. I say private test track, anyway. Completely floored it, and then to sort of throw you back in your seat is absolutely incredible. I can see why that car's selling so well. It's really, really cool to drive, and software.
And obviously, whenever people talk about Tesla, there's always someone a bit nasal that comes to the conversation and talks about the build quality. Did you see any build quality issues?
No, we were looking around the inside because we had quite a while with it. Well, quite a long evening with it. and I couldn't find anything that was rattling or squeaking or that felt bad quality. I mean, I know it's a world away price difference from the MG4, but that was instantly I found things that weren't quite right on that car.
Yeah, sure.
But with the Model Y, I was like, this is great. I don't know what people are on about. But
yeah, I mean, I did like 1,100 miles in that. I did Guildford to Edinburgh in the Model Y.
Yep.
And we didn't get one rattle, one squeak, one anything. It was an absolute joy to live with. For me, I think the early Model 3s that we were getting here when they were produced in the US weren't the best with build quality. People were going to collect them and finding windscreen cracks seemed to be a really common one. But since we've started getting the Chinese ones instead, obviously the Chinese know how to manufacture. And I don't see issues with them now at all. The only thing I would say about the Model Y that's a negative, and there are very, very few negatives with that car, is the turning circle.
I didn't notice that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you need to reverse into a tight space or something, the 3-point turn turns into a sort of 13-point turn. But then a lot of cars with a poor turning circle sort of benefit from a bit of a bonus on the handle in front. So it's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, no, I thought it was incredible. I can definitely see why people are buying them. It's sort of the best selling car in the year at the moment. So in the world, sorry. Yeah. Get on some to EV news. So earlier on in June, there was some news from BYD. So the BYD Dolphin, me and you saw at the Fully Charged show in April. It made its sort of public debut there. And they've now announced that for the pricing of it and when it's going to launch in the UK. So it's going to start at £25,490, so £25,490 in the UK. It's going to go on sale in the UK this summer, so not even next year. It's going to be pretty much the next few months. At the moment, it's going to be pretty hard to go and see one, I reckon, because there's only 4 dealers in the whole of the country, but they are working hard to expand this to 20 pretty soon. So just some headline stats about the Dolphin. It's going to go head-to-head with the MG4, ID3, and the Corsa Electric. It's going to be cheaper than all of them. It's been on sale in China already. The one we're getting here is going to be a little bit longer. Dimensions going to be a little bit different. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it looks well priced, doesn't it? I know we sort of took the BYD Atto out, didn't we, at the SMMT test day, and the build quality certainly seemed reasonably good. I wouldn't say it was the most exciting of vehicles, but it was certainly well put together and made a sort of compelling argument for itself, really. And from what we saw of the Dolphin, again, it looked fairly well screwed together. And at 25 grand, 25.5 grand, that does seem to be very well priced. So that could do very well. It's whether people buy into the whole build your dreams thing. You know, so still to this day, you know, Genesis produce some phenomenal vehicles and people just don't recognize the brand, although that's starting to change. And I think a car with build your dreams written across the back of it is a bit of a challenge for some. And it's whether they get over that hurdle or they just go for the Vauxhall that they know. That'll be their biggest problem. I'm guessing they'll do pop-ups in shopping malls and town centres and things like that so that people get to see the cars. And throw a bit of marketing spend behind it.
Well, hopefully, like one brand that is newish, new to the UK, like BYD, is GWM, the Aura. I have not seen one of those on the road yet.
I've seen one. I saw it last week. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you've seen my latest lease deals of the month video, there are some amazing deals on those at the moment.
There is actually. Did have a look.
Yeah. Pick one up for, I think it's £900 deposit and £300 a month.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, just a few months ago, they were $600 a month.
Yeah.
And when you think that's a £32,000 car, it's not bad.
No, pretty good. So, like the Atto 3, the Dolphin has that funky screen that goes from portrait to landscape with a touch of a button. Yeah, that feature was pretty cool for me. To me.
Me too.
And then,
children.
Yeah, definitely. Man-childs. It's got BYD's Blade battery pack, which means that the battery pack is part of the structure of the car, which is quite a interesting development for them. It's a 60 kilowatt hour unit, 265 miles of range, which that's bang on what it should be, really. There is a cheaper model for 44 kilowatt hours with 211 miles of range. So And it's not going to be slow either. It's got 201 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. That's pretty good. So
yep. I was chatting to a guy at the BYD stand at SMMT. Actually, he's one of the technical guys. Sorry, forgot his name and title, but he was telling me more about that blade technology and just how much safer it is and how much better it is when it has impact damage.
Yeah,
and he was saying they'd done some testing where they basically drive a nail into the battery with a large a mechanical object from a distance.
Yep.
And normally an EV battery, if you drive a nail into it, it will literally explode.
Yeah.
Fairly spectacularly and theatrically. He said with theirs, it goes, and you can actually still put your hand on it. It's about 28 degrees once it's been pierced, as opposed to several hundred degrees. And I think a number of brands are now looking at BYD to buy their batteries from. So
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I think Tesla are using their batteries. Might be wrong.
Yeah. So interesting.
Some other BYD news. So the company is still expanding throughout UK and Europe, and they're expanding throughout France. So they've only got one model on sale at the moment. Obviously, we've got the Dolphin coming soon. And in France, the company's working hard to announce 5 new electric cars, with the initial trio being the Atto 3, the Han, and the Tang. I've not seen those two. Not seen those two just yet. Looks like we've got a larger SUV with the Tang and then a smaller sedan or saloon car with the Han. So that'd be quite cool.
Yeah. Do you feel they need a little bit of marketing thought behind the naming of those cars in the UK?
Yeah, I think so.
The Tang might be a bit of an edgy one.
Yeah, definitely. I think they need a rename. So, but obviously they haven't announced what those will be yet. If they do end up renaming them. So BYD are going to partner with 4 large dealer networks in France. Only 3 of them have been mentioned so far. We've got BY MyCar, Crowley, and Bodmer. Deliveries to the dealers. So the BYD dealers will start receiving cars in June, so last month, and then sales and delivery to customers will start pretty much soon after that. So one video I found really interesting. I didn't see anything about this car anywhere else apart from this video from Top Gear. Tom Wiki4 did a video on it last week. It's called the Emily GT. And essentially, it's built by Saab's old engineers, and the specs on it look incredible. Yeah,
this is an astounding looking thing, isn't it? It's got a massive battery pack, 174 kilowatt hours, and it's supposed to be capable of over 600 miles on a single charge.
Absolutely mad, yeah. The thing I found really, really clever was the way that the whole thing's built. So traditionally, with normal electric cars, you've got the motors in the axles, and then you've got prop shafts or drive shafts driving the wheels like a petrol car. But the company has managed to build a small little motor that lives inside the wheel that can go as small as 17 inches or 18 inches. They've been testing it off-road on Land Rovers, and you can just submerge it in water and it's not going to cause any problem. And that means they've got more space for more batteries, which is just... I've never seen anything like that before.
No, it's very cool. It's quite a good-looking car as well. It sort of reminds me of the Chevy Camaro a little bit.
Oh yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, at this stage, it's just a prototype. It only took the engineers 10 months to build it from start to finish, which is that's another impressive thing.
It feels to me like it's going to be like £1 million when it comes out somehow.
Yeah, or maybe a couple 100,000. Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be a challenger to Tesla somehow.
No, but hopefully the tech that they've built, with the space saving of it, is going to trickle down over the years, and that would be perfect in a small, like upsized vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's already a car that's got no space inside for batteries, and if you could cram some more batteries in there and make it better range, that'd be perfect. So, hats off to them.
It's almost like if they do produce it, it'll almost be produced as a proof of concept.
Yeah.
And you think that they'll end up as probably a technology company or a design house rather than perhaps a manufacturer themselves in the long run.
Yeah, I think so. The next bit of news, it caused some heated discussions on Twitter over the last few days. Volkswagen have claimed that due to strong customer reluctance to EVs, they're going to temporarily scale back their production. A lot of manufacturers have come out and said, along with reports from the SMMT, that's not really the case. I can't really understand why they've said that.
Yeah, but my personal take on this is that VW have been a little bit lazy, and they've released sort of 3 main EVs, if you look at the ID3, 4 and 5, that are all extremely similar. They've all got the same really quite naff interior. They've all got the same broken infotainment system, and they're charging a premium price for it. If we put it into perspective, if you get into the ID3, I would say a 10-year-old Golf has got a better interior in terms of its build quality and the materials used and everything else. And, it's not a cheap car at all. You're looking well in the 30, top end of 30,000 to get one of those. And I just don't think they've come to market with interesting enough cars at the right price. If you look at something like the ID Buzz, has done really well, but it's interesting. Although it's still got that infotainment system in, it's at least interesting.
Yeah, the ID Buzz is awesome. So
yeah, you could look at the others, and it seems like they almost rushed them out a bit. They went from being primarily a diesel car company to let's pivot ultra quick, and we'll put out these EVs. And I just don't think they've done a good enough job of it at this stage. Certainly not at that price point. If all the cars were £10,000 less, it's a different argument.
Yeah.
But again, that infotainment system and however many software updates they've had to it, it's still got issues. It's just not good enough from VW.
No, in my eyes, VW used to be, is sort of like M&S. It's sort of like a good quality option.
Quality,
it's not super expensive, but it's going to be like a good, reliable option. And certainly the cars I've had experience with before the ID stuff definitely contributed to that. There was super high quality. Even the current vans, so not even considering the ID Buzz, the California and the Caddy and stuff, they're still good. So it's interesting. And I think making a big fuss and dance about the fact that people aren't buying them. But yes, if we look at the SMMT report for June 2023, battery electric vehicles for that month were 39.4% up on June 2022. I mean, that to me is pretty black and white, the fact that people are buying them.
And if you look at how many units Tesla has shifted of the Model Y, you could probably combine all those VW electric vehicles together, double the number of sales, and you're still not at the Model Y. And there's the reason for it is they've produced a really good car that's really compelling, quite interesting, and it's priced well.
And the software is cool on it, so you could do a lot of cool stuff with the software. So yeah, in response to the so-called reluctance with customers, Volkswagen have cancelled a shift at the factory for the next 2 weeks. This was on the 29th of June, so it's still ongoing, ahead of a 4-week holiday period for employees who work on the electric car line. This is in the Saxony factory in Germany. Production of the Passat will remain as it was, the petrol diesel Passat. So Manfred Wolf, the head of Works Council for the plant, spoke to a German newspaper and said, "We're experiencing strong customer reluctance in the electric vehicle sector." He also mentioned that production of the ID7 was supposed to start this month, but is now being pushed back to later this year. So they're just delaying the new model launching as well.
Yeah, and that suggests that they've decided to change something in it. And I would imagine it might be that infotainment, it might be some of the interior. So I know VW got a new CEO, I think last year, the actual group. And his first thing was, we need to up our game in terms of interiors again, because things have slipped. And he's just axed the CEO of Audi for producing sort of bland cars, essentially, because he feels like Audi's position in the market has slipped, which I think most people would agree with. Yeah, and I think it's about getting back to that thing where VW and Audi are sort of reassuringly expensive, like 10% more expensive, 20% more expensive, but you're getting a quality product.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And that CEO said, I can't remember what it was now, but about the ID2, he said this is going to be sort of a return to form with the ID2, which I'm happy about, because I really like the look of that car. Hopefully when it comes out, it'll be good. But
I think the ID7 could do well as well, particularly places like Germany where they like big saloons and estates. Yeah. It's essentially the Passat replacement. Yep. And it's been a huge car for them for however many years. And maybe delaying it and actually having a rethink over a couple of things will be the best move they've ever made.
Well, I've got quite a bit of news from Fiat this month. So a few days ago, Fiat announced Project Grey, or Operation No Grey, actually. It's called Fiat announces plans to no longer make grey cars, and their tagline for the company is going to be the country of colours, or the company of colours. They're going to promote colours of Italy instead. So in the UK, grey is the most popular colour for a car, which I didn't actually realise until writing this. But the company wants people to have a more vibrant look for their cars. So oranges, yellows, greens, and purples and things. So they're going to start with the Fiat 600, which we'll get onto in a minute. Going to obviously expand out to the whole range of the cars. So you mentioned that you quite like the look of the grey IONIQ 6. So what do you think about the fact that Fiat aren't going to offer any more grey cars?
I think it's a bit daft, and it seems like something where a load of marketing execs have got in a room, put on their challenging glasses, built a mood board, and someone's come up with this idea. And it almost feels like an idea that's led by the PR stunt rather than anything else, where they just dumped a car into a load of orange paint the other day. For some markets, perhaps it would work, but I think people want choice nowadays with everything they buy. Certainly, if I were to get a Fiat 500, I'd get a grey one. I'd get the dark grey, and the other car is for a bloke of my age. The Fiat 500 could be seen as being a bit of a feminine car, so I'd probably go for like a nice dark grey with some dark wheels, and go for the butchest looking version I could possibly find, because I'm sad. But lots of people would probably think a similar way. I mean, there is a reason why grey cars are the most popular in the UK. I don't know what that is, but it's a fact.
I quite like the fact they've done it. It was going to make their cars stand out more than anything, I think, on the road. If people are buying the cars and they have to be these bright colours, you either go either two ways. People don't buy them, or people get them in these cool, interesting colours. I mean, I've seen quite a few MG4s in that bright blue and bright orange, and they look quite cool and they stand out on the road. So it can either go one of two ways. So
why take choice away from people? I never understand that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. There's some other news with Fiat. So Fiat had this big media event the other day, earlier this week, on top of I can't remember the name of it, but their big building with the racetrack on top of it, or the test track on top of it.
Yeah.
And they invited a load of media people. Fiat 600e was announced, along with the Fiat Topolino. So the Fiat Topolino we spoke about last episode, but they've now said that they're going to announce it. They're going to bring it to the UK. So we weren't too sure last time if they were going to bring it to the UK, because it would sort of go head to head with the AMI. And so far this platform, they haven't sold two of the same kind in other countries. So, but for the first time, they're going to do that now. No word on price, but for reference, the AMI is costing £8,095. That's jumped up quite a bit since it was announced, quite a few grand. But yeah, they're going to offer it with doors. It's going to offer, you're going to be able to get it with that rope, if you want, yeah. And their big thing is they're going to aim it at Generation Z buyers, specifically and primarily designed for urban environments.
Yeah, I could see it working in central London or like big European cities and what have you. Obviously, it's only got 40-something miles of range, 47 miles of range.
Yep.
And I guess it will be much like the AMI, in as much as it's restricted to 28 miles an hour or something like that.
Probably.
So that 16-year-olds can drive them in Europe or whatever it is. Is it younger than that?
I think it's 15-year-olds in France.
15, yeah. It's insane,
mad.
isn't it? But I think for it to work outside of someone that's right in the centre of London, and it's probably a creative for their profession, I think they would have to probably up that restriction maybe up to 40 miles an hour. You only have to think the amount of towns now where you have a ring road or a section of dual carriageway on your drive to work. And 47 miles of range is probably okay, but is it going to actually deliver 47 miles of range?
One thing I noticed with the front and the rear, so with the AMI, the front panel and the rear panel are identical, or they've got different lights. With this, they've got round headlights for the front, and then they've got the lozenge-shaped rear lights. So they've actually gone to some effort to make it look different. If that adds to the cost, I don't know.
It looks a lot nicer than the AMI, doesn't it?
Looks really cool, and that new Fiat badge looks quite nice as well. Just the
it does. Yeah. Yeah, but it looks more like a car than the AMI. The AMI looks more like a pod, doesn't it?
Yeah. They've added a convertible roof to it as well, like the Fiat 500. So you can get a retractable cloth roof on the top. And it only comes in one colour, this green, Verde Vito it's called. Like the AMI, only one colour. It helps keep the cost down. So one more bit of Fiat news. So again, same event, the Topolino was announced going to come to the UK. We got the 600E, or the 600 electric. And what this is essentially, it's going to sit on the same platform as the Jeep Avenger and replace the 500X, I believe, or be the same sort of size.
Yeah.
This looks pretty cool. It's going to be a little bit expensive, 37k, 250 miles of range, but that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's weird that it's obviously built on the same platform as the Avenger, because it feels almost like the Avenger will be its biggest rival. But yeah, numbers don't look too bad. 249 miles of range, 54 kilowatt hour battery. So yeah, seems destined for reasonable success. It's quite a funky looking thing. It looks like they've sort of put 500e on steroids, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting looking car, which, as you know, I always like interesting looking cars, whether I like them or not. Something that gets a reaction these days is becoming a little bit of a rarity, isn't it?
Yeah. You mentioned about the Jeep Avenger being its competitor. I've noticed, I don't know if that's a thing they're not worried about, but for me, when people mention, this car from the same group is going to compete with this car, I don't know if that's, I don't know if they're not bothered by that. I don't think it's a problem, because at the end of the day, the parent company's still making money, whether or not they get a sale or not. And they all sort of helps each other. I'm not sure if that's a problem, but
yeah, it's a weird one, because like I've spoken to people from like Hyundai and Kia, for example, and there's a real rivalry between them, although they're all the same company, and each one is expected to perform. And sometimes some of the development's done from one side or the other, and then they have to give it to the other, essentially.
Yeah.
But each one has that pressure to perform. I don't know if that's the same within Stellantis, but I imagine it probably is.
I'd imagine with Stellantis, it's probably even worse than that, because they've just been forced together in the last few years.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's not sort of an organic thing, is it?
No, the sort of the two, the FCA and Citroen Group just sort of pushed together in 2020 and then sort of expected to get on. So I'm not sure how that works.
No, me either.
I'm just reading this article. It says the 500X will still be on sale as ICE only. So I'd imagine that would probably just run its course until late this decade, until it needs replacing. So,
have you driven one of those, by the way?
No, I have not. Is it any good, or
it's not? It's not going to be a sad loss when that filters out. I'll put it that way.
Fair enough. Now, my first Fiat 500 experience was at the SMMT drive day with the 500.
Oh, when you tried to kill me in it?
Yeah. Didn't succeed.
Have we mentioned that before? I'm not sure if
we have. Yeah. Unfortunately, you're available to tell the tale. So I haven't heard of this company before. Xpeng. Have you heard of Xpeng before?
Yeah, so they've been sort of floating around these news articles for a little while now.
Yeah.
And talk of this coming and that coming. I think they're already out in China. I think they've been around in China for a while. In fact, probably, I'm sure there was an Xpeng sitting there at Fully Charged Live when we went to that.
Oh, okay.
I think there was a sort of a Model 3, a grey Model 3 looking Xpeng potentially.
Right.
I could be completely wrong. But yeah, I think they're already around in China and definitely have plans to come to Europe and thinking about coming to the UK.
Yeah. It's quite a new company. It's only been around since 2014. Judging by the headline stats, though, the company's considering launching in the UK. It's going to be the Xpeng G6, which is what we're discussing, is going to be £22,900. However, that might change. But it's going to have 360 miles of range, so pretty good.
Yeah, very. You have to think that by the time it gets here and we've added various duties and taxes on top of it, it will be more than that. But that's not a bad place to start, is it?
No. So it's a little small crossover, well, medium-sized crossover. It's going to be coming to Norway first in next year, as well as Sweden and Denmark. It's going to go head-to-head with the Model Y, and if it is that price, that's going to be a good competitor for it.
Yeah.
And they've already they've already had 35,000 orders for the G6. But yeah, the specs on it look really good. So there's going to be a bigger battery pack that's going to do 470 miles of range. That's based on the Chinese equivalent of the WLTP. Yeah, 470 miles of range for probably like late £20,000. Going to be a really, really good competitor for a lot of companies.
Absolutely, yeah. They've, I think they owe perhaps a slight tip of the hat to Tesla for the interior. We won't say they've copied it. We'll say they've taken inspiration from the Model Y, I think.
Yeah. I do like, though, that the center console is sort of close to you and the cup holders are within reach.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a few cars I've driven recently where the cup holders are quite far down and you sort of got to lean a little bit and a little bit dodgy. But
yeah, there are some weird trends with cars now that are creeping in, and it seems like one has it built into the design, and then you sort of think, oh, that's a bit odd, and then the next car you get in has it. Like the amount of cars now that don't have a rear wiper, which is just annoying.
Yeah, no, definitely. We've got some news from MG. So MG4, the XPower model, sort of the sporty version, was rumoured for a little while now, and earlier this week they confirmed it on their press site that the MG4 XPower is going to be coming pretty soon. It's going to make its debut at Goodwood this year, alongside the Cyberster sports car. And as I said, there's been quite a lot of murmurings about this car. Bristol Street Motors even leaked the car by accident on their website. It's still listed, actually. And they got all the specs pretty much right. But this is going to be a car with double the power of the current MG4 Trophy. It looks pretty cool, actually. I like the orange brake calipers. They look cool.
Yeah, and what was it, 0-16 3.8? Was it?
Yeah, 3.8 seconds, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, say what you want about build quality and battery life and all those kind of things. You have to say that chassis is extremely impressive, and it's a real driver's car. You know, the rear-wheel drive works very well.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know, it just feels like a real driver's car, and it feels like it deserves a quicker version. So I'll be really interested to get in one of these when it comes out.
Yeah, the MG4 was definitely a fun car to drive.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with that side of it, definitely. It's going to have 430 horsepower, 443 pound-foot of torque. As you said, 0-60 in 3.8 seconds. Top speed of 124. It's going to go on sale this month, priced from £37,000. That's, if you think about it, that's basically the start price of the ID3. If you can get this rapid and cool-looking MG4 for the same price as an ID3, I can't blame people for going for that. If they
no, 100%. So. Yeah, but there's no argument really, is there?
No. And the MG4 doesn't have a rear wiper, but this version does. So,
wow. That's worth getting it alone for that. You see, my old man rants do make sense.
They've also gone to town on the suspension, so it's 25% stiffer than the standard one. There's a lot of new anti-roll bars, spring and damper recalibration. There's these huge discs that are ventilated, along with these. I love the look of the green paint and the orange brake calipers. Looks really, really cool.
Yeah,
definitely. The range hasn't officially been announced yet, but based on that leak from Bristol Street Motors, it's supposed to be about 240 miles, which is down from the 280 of the long range. But I think a 40 mile sort of loss for the speed and power of this model, I think that's probably worth it.
Hopefully, it's the same battery chemistry as the Trophy rather than the entry in the long range versions, so that it doesn't completely die when it's cold.
Yeah, a little bit disappointed with the interior. They haven't done anything with it. One of the reports I read said they put bucket seats in it, or Alcantara seats, but MG's press release didn't mention that, and the pictures released, they haven't pictured that. So we'll have to wait and see. But a little bit disappointed they haven't put any red stitching or green stitching inside, or orange stitching. So
yeah,
but other than that, looks pretty good.
They might even do it as a pack or something, I guess, where you get a
trim pack.
Yeah, you get the seats and the crazy stitching and a wacky seat belt or something.
Yeah, orange seatbelt, quite cool.
Yeah.
And as we're recording today, it's the 7th of July. Today is the very last day the Ford Fiesta is going to be produced. I know this is a petrol car, but the reason we're going to mention it is because it's being replaced by EVs. Today is the very last day that Ford are going to be making the car. There's going to be two that are going to be, the very last two are going to go to Ford's heritage fleet. So one's going to go to the UK, one's going to go to Cologne. For 47 years, this has been in production, and they're going to replace it with the Ford Explorer electric EV, the Puma electric. So
bizarre, really, to think of a world without Fiestas on the road. I mean, it's such a huge seller still over here. I mean, it's it's in the top 10 of car sales every month in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And usually at the end of the year, it'll be within the top 3 or 4. The Corsa often outsells it, but it's weird that Ford didn't look at it and think, well, let's try and electrify this and come out with the, Fiesta E or something. I think really it's more a victim of this one world thing that Ford are doing, where they just have one set of models that they release worldwide. And obviously a huge market for them is the US, where people don't drive around in little Fiestas very often. So I don't know if that's more of a factor than anything else, but Ford just seems to keep pumping out SUV after SUV now, and I don't know, the Fiesta has been such a massive car for them, and you think it could continue to be for years to come, but obviously not.
Yeah, I think we mentioned last episode, it's just they didn't think there was a market for it. Why is the Corsa selling so well?
Yeah.
And the fact that company Stellantis has managed to produce small electric cars, it just begs to differ why they haven't done it, but there obviously is some reasons for it. So, but yeah, so that's end of the Fiesta. So
apologies if you're picking up any background noise, by the way, but there's a Hoover going around outside my office. So
it sounded like a murder.
Sorry about that. maybe it's a murder. I don't know. Make sure I've got the life insurance around somewhere. So.
Quick plug to the life insurance sponsor. Yeah, speaking of small cars, I thought this was pretty interesting. Vauxhall announced, or they've sort of released a little PDF that's in collaboration with Debritz, which I'm not too sure what that is. But it's sort of like a electric vehicle etiquette guide. So if you buy an electric car from Vauxhall, you get this little nice pamphlet with your car. It's all written in nice sort of serif font.
Yeah.
And it's sort of saying what to do and how, sort of respect the queue and help drivers. And it's a little bit strange, but it's quite
cool, isn't it? It's got quite a nice little. It looks like something you'd receive from, I don't know, the National Trust or something.
Yeah,
it's quite a cool thing. I think we mentioned it in the previous podcast, or perhaps when we were chatting or something. But the respect the queue is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And certainly at service stations and things, if there is a queue, obviously there's no queuing system involved, and you can imagine how many punch-ups that's caused over the country already.
Yeah.
Be a good EV guest. Help fellow EV drivers, be streetwise, prioritise planning, good timekeeping, know your rights. Yeah, but it's quite a cool little thing.
Yeah, National Trust sort of brings to mind lots of the drawings and things, so...
Yeah.
One thing I like that they mentioned is the fact that you don't need to charge to 100%.
Yeah.
They said
you often see people sitting there waiting for that final 2% that's going to take 20 minutes, don't you?
Yeah. It just says that all of our electric vehicles can achieve up to 80% in half an hour with a rapid charger, and you don't need to charge longer than necessary, which is good that they mentioned that, because I think some people don't realise they just base their battery experience on a phone or a laptop battery.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Or their car, and they think you have empty to full.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've driven this car before. Let me just get this pronunciation right, based on your video. Hyundai Kona.
Well done.
Yeah. Have you driven the Kona electric before, the old one?
No, but I've driven the standard Kona, but not the electric. Okay. Although I went to the launch of the IONIQ 6, and they actually gave us a sneak preview of the Kona electric, the new one. So they had it in a room, and it was unveiled from underneath a sheet, and we got to have a poke around in it. And it feels a long way away from the old Kona, certainly in terms of the interior, some of the exterior styling.
Yeah,
the size of it. It's got a much bigger boot.
Okay.
It feels like a real upgrade from the current Kona or the old Kona, and that old Kona is actually a really good car.
Yeah.
So this could be quite a special thing.
Yeah, and I like the interior of this. So it's sort of taken a little bit of inspiration from the IONIQ 6 and IONIQ 5 with the dual screen, and the steering wheel's hasn't got the company logo on it anymore. But one thing I really like is that there's still a massive amount of physical buttons on there.
Yeah,
for the heating, there's like 10 buttons in one strip below the screen, which is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And really nice materials they've used in it as well. And like the ambient lighting was really effective. They've gone for that single light bar across the front. Really a nice piece of design.
Yeah, definitely. This looks really cool. It's going to have 223 miles of range, £35,000, and they're going to put a lot of the learning they've obtained from the IONIQ. So the old Kona was produced originally as a petrol diesel car, and this one, the electric one, was built first. They will still be making petrol and hybrid versions, so those versions aren't going away. So it's not going to go EV only. But as you mentioned, the interior has got a lot more space. The quality of the materials have gone up as well. And we've got two different power options. We've got a 48.4 kilowatt hour battery and a 65.4 kilowatt hour battery as well. So a lot of choice.
The great thing with the new Hyundais and the infotainment and everything is just how well everything works. Like none of it's spectacular. You don't get in and think, oh, wow, look at this. But it all just works and everything's sort of where you expect it to be. There's no drama with any of it. They're very, very easy cars to live with, modern Hyundais.
Yeah, and they've come a very long way from even the last 10 or 15 years. They're completely
it's insane. If you look at the last 10 years, it's insanity, really. They've gone from a brand that would struggle to keep up with like your Ford and Vauxhall a bit.
Yep.
And were probably more of a rival to some of the French brands, to now you get in one and they get in a German rival and you kind of think, well, I'm going to have this.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of them on sale, so they've done a very good job. Yep. Last bit of EV news is the Dacia Spring, or Dacia Spring. This car's it's absolutely top of the charts in most of Europe, places like Romania as well. And they've sold 120,000 units so far, this little EV, just based on because it was so cheap. This was announced in 2021, and just this week, Dacia have said it's going to finally come to the UK. I know the UK CEO of Dacia has tried exceptionally hard to get a launch here, and looks like he's pulled it off. So, little tiny hatchback, probably about, I think it's probably a little bit bigger than the Up. I can't remember the exact dimensions of it. But it's going to, so based on the French pricing, it's going to be £14,500. But the company hasn't said how much exactly it's going to be yet.
Yeah, it'll probably be more like 17 grand by the time it gets here, I'd imagine. There aren't too many cars, electric cars, around that price available in the UK, are there?
There aren't any, so.
No, exactly.
No. I love the fact they're doing this. And I remember Fully Charged did a drive video of it a few years ago. I just thought that's such a good idea because it's just so cheap and people don't want something like the AMI. This is going to actually go a bit further and a bit faster. So
yeah, it's sort of a proper car rather than a bit of a gimmick or a marketing car kind of thing.
Yeah, it isn't the most fastest thing in the world. It's going to have 44 horsepower, 28 kilowatt hours battery pack. 120 miles of range roughly. So,
but when you think how many of those 900cc Sanderos you see around, and 100% of people bought them because they were cheap.
Yeah,
and there are lots of people that will buy the cheapest thing available, and if they can fill that gap, then good luck to them.
Yeah, one thing to note is the current car isn't the most quality item. The interior quality, but what Dacia have said is that before it launches in the UK, it will get a big redesign. So the interior is going to have most of the attention with new technology and make it a bit more appealing to us Brits, I guess. So,
which could be because they want to charge 24 grand for it or something instead.
Yeah,
so
maybe
we'll see.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
That's it for all the EV news. I thought we'd have a quick discussion. I meant to talk about it last episode, but I noticed in your lease videos as well, you mentioned it, that EV prices have come down a little bit. The lease prices. But I've noticed on the used market that EVs they've plummeted in value.
Yeah, they've absolutely tanked, and dealers have got piles and piles of EVs that they can't sell.
Yeah, and one car I noticed incredibly so is that the Honda E. I found a few on Auto Trader that were 1 or 2 years old. They've gone from 37 grand to 19 grand on the used market. I was just thinking, how the hell has that happened? And I just wondered if you got any sort of insight of what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got things like the ID3, You can get one now for 18 grand. You can get a £120,000 Taycan for 60. In fact, Porsche, you'll be lucky to get a Porsche Centre to take one off your hands. And I think really, I mean, I've said it in lots of my videos before, and in fact, I said it in that IONIQ 6 road trip video. You know, it's my favourite EV, but I wouldn't buy one. I'd lease one. And the reason for that is, I think people fear, they fear the battery running out of warranty and what's going to happen with that, because most cars still only have an 8-year warranty. And, you know, you look at the cost of replacing the batteries in a lot of these vehicles, it's insane money, probably close to what you paid for the car in the first place. And secondly, I think just the rate of technology changing and improvement, you're just worried that you're going to be left with something obsolete. You know, it's like, are you going to buy a 3-year-old iPhone when they may change the software on it soon, and actually you can't access this or that or the other? And I think that's a real issue, particularly when you've got such disruption in the market. People like Tesla, who will just come out and say, oh, actually, anyone that orders a Model 3 from Monday, it's going to have an extra 50 miles of range and it's going to be £3,000 less. And they just will not care.
Yeah.
You know, they just react in that way. You've got all these new entrants coming to market. We've got cars coming from China, from brands we've never heard of before. You know, is that car that you invest your money in now going to be worth anything in another 3 years? Say you pick up one of those ID3s for 18 grand now. In 3 years, is it going to be worth 10 or is it going to be worth 3? I think it's all too new for people, and I think you can get them so cheap on a lease. Comparatively, it's not cheap; it's a lot of money still, but comparatively, you can get a new car with the latest tech fairly cheap on a lease. And is that influencing people's decision? I don't know. You also obviously, that's not an environmentally friendly way of doing things to constantly have new cars. But if it means that it reduces the cost of the used cars and more people get into EVs that way. I mean, we bought a new car a year ago, second-hand car. At the time, could not have afforded any kind of EV apart from an old Nissan Leaf or an old Zoe with a battery warranty, a battery lease on it, sorry. And nothing remotely practical for a family. Where I'm looking today and thinking, well, yeah, you could get an ID3, or you could get even a Model 3. You can get a used Model 3 now for 25 grand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'll just have a look at Auto Trader. So for the Fiat 500e, there was a base model that had a 24 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's 120 miles of range. It's not the most amazing thing. But there's quite a few on Auto Trader for 15k.
Yeah.
That have done 400 miles. Of total mileage. And there's even one with the larger battery pack for 15,998. It's 87 kilowatt hour battery pack. Sorry, a 42 kilowatt hour battery pack, 200 mile range for just under 16 grand. That's like bonkers.
Someone sent me something on Twitter the other day, and it was an offer from We Buy Any Car for a Cupra Born that was 37 grand.
Yeah.
I think it was 11 months old, and the offer was 21,000, and the Cupra dealership offered them 100 quid more on a Part X. So it's lost 30-40% of its value in 11 months.
So when you lease a car, then is the dealership is absorbing that amount of cost, isn't it? So if you bought an ID3 for 37, and then 12 months down the line you trade it in for, I don't know, an ID4 or something, and then the dealership sells it for 20 or 25, that dealership's just losing money at the end of the day. Yeah,
so there's two different types of leasing that often one gets called leasing and one gets called car finance. But PCP, which most people use in the UK to fund their cars at a dealership, is just a form of leasing. You pay a deposit, you pay a monthly amount. If you want to keep the car at the end, you have to come up with this huge balloon payment to actually keep hold of the car. Car dealerships love it because they keep you tied in forever. I think it's the worst way possible to buy a car, personally.
Yeah.
The other form is PCH, which is like contract hire, personal contract hire, which is what everyone refers to as car leasing. With that, the car is generally sourced wholesale, so you often miss the dealer entirely, although they are sometimes, and they do sometimes end up being supplied by a dealer. But the finance companies are essentially buying or promising to buy a certain number of cars from source, so they get a big discount. They then negotiate the finance on it and you get the lease, and then at the end of it the car goes back, and they'll either send the car to auction themselves, or they'll have an agreement with someone that buys all their old stock at X price.
Yeah. That's probably why we're seeing some cheap electric cars on Auto Trader.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just can't get over this Fiat 500 electric for 16 grand. It's just like, it's lost so much value. It's only done 20,000 miles. It's only 1 year old. So
yeah, it's crazy. Like the depreciation on some of them is epic, really.
I thought we'd have a discussion because it's part of the market which I guess not many people know about. And you're definitely the person to ask and talk about that. So one last thing I want to talk about is this report from Auto Express. I talk about an RAC survey they did, and the cost of living crisis that we're going through right now. Apparently, 25% of drivers are just avoiding getting their car serviced or repaired. Now, yeah, that could end up in quite some dangerous situations, essentially. So if you don't get your tyres changed, and just blow out on the motorway, it's not. Yeah, it's a worry for large numbers of garages and workshop businesses. They've said who would just see the longer term threat of electric vehicles, which have fewer moving and serviceable parts. So I don't know. It's not great. It's just one of the horrible side effects of the cost of living crisis. So
yeah, and I think a lot of it again is due to profiteering, probably, because I said this old man ranting something the other day, but you only have to go into a supermarket and look at items that used to cost £1 that now cost £1.25 or £1.50. You won't find too many items that used to cost £1 that are now £1.07 or £1.12.
Yeah,
everything's gone up in nice big fat round numbers, and it's a lot of it is an absolute nonsense. And I think probably in every industry at the moment there are people that are just looking at this as an opportunity to pump prices up, and then it's very easy to complain about customers falling when you've pumped all your prices up, and perhaps actually your profit margin's the same. You've got fewer customers, but you're making more on each one.
Yeah,
and that's something that often gets missed in these kind of articles.
Yeah. RAC have said while drivers might feel that the best thing to do is put off servicing, we strongly advise against it, as repair costs are likely to snowball when things go wrong. That's quite a good point, actually, because if you don't get something repaired or maintained, the cost of getting it fixed can just be huge. So
yeah, we've got to take our car into Citroen actually for a service, and I called the other day and they want like £450 for a service. And you look at it and they're charging £95 plus VAT for an hour's labour.
Yeah.
And you just think, what? This is the same garage, by the way, that I had to take the car to 3 times for them to notice that the brake pads need replacing. And I took them there with a squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
So that level of expertise, £95 plus VAT an hour.
Cool. That's all we've got for this month of Charging Status. As always, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. For a full description of the show, visit the episode link in the show notes. And of course, check out the chapters complete with images to make your listening experience much more enjoyable. Thanks again to Vehicle Score for sponsoring this episode. Vehicle Score helps reduce the guesswork when buying a used car. Remember to use code INTERFACE10, that's INTERFACE10, to get 10% off the cost of a vehicle history search. We also have an ad-free premium version of this show available on Apple Podcasts. That will help support this episode and future podcasts from The Interface. Jim also has a book out all about used cars. Be sure to check that out. It's a great read. Link is in the show notes. Awesome. Thanks for joining me, Jim, and we'll see you again next time.
Will do. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for listening, everyone. Today's episode is sponsored by vehiclescore.co.uk, the best site to visit if you want to make a more informed decision when buying a used car.